Hello everyone, it's Bavar from PTC, this time with a bit of a lore mini-series on the Tevarin Wars. This first episode will focus on the major plays and first contact, with the second focusing on the First War, the third episode on the Second War, and the final episode on the fallout and some important characters post-war. As with any major historical event, real or otherwise, there are always the main stars of the show. And in this particular case, it's the UPE, or the United Planets of Earth, and the Tevarin. In a move sure to please the masses, we will cover humanity first. Without giving you the full history of humanity, it's suffice to say the UPE was a relatively short-lived form of government, only enduring a mere 23 years, from 2523 to 2546. Which was created as a reformed version of the United Nations of Earth. She was created as a reaction to the preferential treatment that the citizens of Earth were getting compared to the majority of the human population, which by that stage of things was no longer living on Earth. Similar to a triumvirate, which is a political institution where power is divided between three entities, the UPE had its decision-making shared between the High Advocate, the High General, and the High Secretary, with there being a Senate to act as representatives for all human-controlled planetary systems, which became more and more symbolic as the UPE transitioned into the UEE under the messes. For a short-lived form of government, it managed some fairly significant feats, all things considered, including the exploration boom through Project Farstar, which led to the discovery of multiple systems such as Ellis, Orion, and Terra, and ended upon contact with the Vandal in 2681, a unified currency for all of human space, first contact with the Xi'an and the Tevarin, the first interspecies war, aka the reason for the miniseries, the Tevarin Wars, and the first time there was the subjugation of another sentient species, and their incorporation, however poorly, into the UPE and the UEE. As for the Tevarin, they are a proud species with a keen martial tradition with a homeworld called Caliph. In terms of their political system pre-wars, it was a curious blend between a feudalistic society and an oligarchy with a military government or council holding absolute authority. This being said, there was also significant respect accorded to the non-combat portions of society. They were viewed as valuable cogs in the whole thing, with special benefits reserved for agricultural and industrial workers. The highest position in their government was called the Warlord. The implications or tone of the title don't necessarily paint the entire picture, as it was just as much a political role as it was a military one. The Tevarin, in contrast to the Vandal, venerated conflict as a noble pursuit and tended to have a far more measured and restrained approach. As an aside, in terms of their diet, they particularly enjoyed fibrous vegetables and, like birds in our world, lacked the capacity to taste spicy or bitter food. Due to this, it is common for the Tevarin settlements, such as those on Brunner 2, to see food vendors selling bags of raw, frozen bitter melon and Xi'an demon peppers for snacking on the go, as well as seed balls held together with various syrups or honey. As some additional bits of information regarding Tevarin at the point of contact, or point of first contact I should say, they had developed space travel with at least one other system having a Tevarin presence and having off-world colonies. They had highly advanced shielding technology compared to the UPE, but overall lagged behind to a degree. The UPE at this point could barely manage shields for their larger capital ships, and even then they weren't all that great. Their religion, Rajora, was a warrior code, similar in some respects to Bushido, which combined rhythmic group chanting with precise movements and poses. As a bonus tidbit, Tevarin historical documents do mention an elite fighting force, think your SAS equivalent if you will, called the Naul, whose members were required to master all 343 unique fighting stances before they could be considered prim and proper members, if you will. Humanity's first contact with the Tevarin would pretty much make every Trekkie here recoil in horror. To put it mildly, the very concept of a Prime Directive, if you will, is a very, 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 very foreign concept to the UPE and its scientific community of the time. Keller Lynch of the New Horizons Research Institute found a jump point into what would become known as the Elysium system in the year 2541. He was surprised to find signs that there was an intelligent species in this system. Think radio traffic, satellites, off-planet settlements, and space stations, as well as ship traffic. Without any thought as to possible diplomatic ramifications or first contact protocols, if there were any, he then commenced the scientific equivalent of screw around and find out by yeeting a probe past what turned out to be the Tevarin's home world. Whilst the UPE did make diplomatic overtures, the Tevarin weren't exactly receptive. Being a warrior culture who had just had a probe yeeted past their home world, as well as facing resource shortages and overpopulation issues, left them with only one option: war. Now, with that being the end of the first video, if you enjoyed what you saw here today or want to see more, I'm sure you all know the drill by this point. With that being said, this is Bavar from PTC, signing off.